Hello, I'm Jutika. Welcome back to Excelling Psychology. In this series of lessons, we are learning about attachment for UK AQA Psychology A levels, latest 2025 curriculum. If you haven't already, do watch the first lesson in which I've covered the first topic, animal studies of attachment. Do not watch this one unless you've watched that one because there are a lot of things for which you'll have to draw connections. Before beginning with this lesson, I would like to introduce myself to you. I am a private A level psychology tutor and a school teacher. I'm teaching for more than 12 years now. And if you're interested in scheduling your classes with me, you can contact me. My WhatsApp number and email ID are available in the description box and pinned comment below. I also sell various notes for A level psychology, like past paper solutions, essay packs, quick revision notes. If you want to purchase any of them, my store link is available in the description box and pinned comment below. So, having said that, let's begin with the lesson. I want to remind you that I am only doing explanations in these lessons. If you want exam strategy, how to answer questions, other dedicated videos are available in my channel. In this lesson today, we learn about learning theory of attachment. We'll go over the evaluation also as required by the exam. If you need any more orientation than this, you want to know why I'm teaching in a particular way, why I have selected certain points only for coverage, please do watch the previous video. I have explained everything there. To save time today, I will directly come to the lesson. Try to make the video as brief but as informative as possible by beginning right away. So, what is the learning theory of attachment? Theories give us explanations for why some behaviors occur. So, in learning theory, we will learn why attachment takes place. This is just one perspective. There are many theories, there are many explanations for why attachment happens. Let's see what learning theorists have to say about it. Their basic idea is just that attachment is learned. That is obvious from the name itself. When we say something is learned, we are trying to say that it is not natural, it is not inborn, it has to be acquired. How it has to be acquired? By developing in an environment. So it has to come through experience, it is not innate. Let's understand this idea further. Because as far as we saw in Lorentz study last time, it seemed that attachment was innate. As soon as a baby is born, they start following their mother, imprinting in the case of geese. So this idea seems a little different. Let's understand what it is. There are a group of psychologists known as behavioral psychologists. When you learn about approaches, you will get to learn about them. They have explained not only attachment, they have explained many behaviors in human psychology. So they are the ones who have given learning theory of attachment. They are very famous for their theories on conditioning. If by any chance you have done approaches already, you would have learned about classical conditioning and operant conditioning. So these theories have been given by behaviorists. They use the same theories to explain attachment as well. Conditioning is nothing but learning. When you learn to do something, you're not born with it, it's known as conditioning. So same thing like we saw before. So they say that attachment has to be learned through a process which they call conditioning. And this conditioning, this learning happens in two ways according to them. How we acquire an attachment is through what is called classical conditioning, which is one way of learning. And then how that attachment is maintained, that happens through another process called operant conditioning. Again, if already you have learned about psychopathology, you would have learned that when it comes to phobias, acquisition of the mental disorder called phobia takes place through classical conditioning and maintenance of it occurs through operant conditioning. So, this is the idea which they give for all human behaviors. For them, all behaviors are acquired through one type of learning called classical conditioning, and they are maintained through another type of learning called operant conditioning. So, let's apply these ideas to attachment. How do we acquire attachment? Meaning, in the first place, how does a bond develop between a baby and a caregiver, which is usually the mother? The mother feeds the baby. Okay, they mainly talk about humans, but this is true for any animal. The mother who gives birth to the baby, like in all mammalian species, the mother starts breastfeeding the baby. So the baby derives food from the mother and experiences pleasure. This is a natural response. All babies by birth only, when they get food, they feel pleasure because their hunger drive gets satisfied. Natural is called unconditioned in learning theory. Just now, what we saw, conditioning is learning. So, something that is unlearned, that is unconditioned, will be natural. Now, you'll wonder if attachment is learned, then why are they talking about something natural? They are not saying attachment is natural. They are saying the pleasure which comes from food is natural. And then attachment builds on that. Attachment is learned through some association with this pleasure, as we will see. So, pleasure which comes from food is an unconditioned natural response. Food is the unconditioned stimulus. Think of it in this way: no one has taught the baby that when you get food, you have to feel pleasure. Naturally, a baby feels pleasure towards food. So, it is an unconditioned response, it's a natural response. And food is a stimulus, it is a thing or an object for which the baby naturally feels pleasure. So, they call it an unconditioned stimulus. Now, the baby likes food, and who is always there when the baby gets food? The mother. Because the mother is breastfeeding the baby. So, she has to be there at the time of feeding. So, the mother gets associated with food. Classical conditioning, you should know, is nothing but learning by association. Whenever you see this term, this is what should come to your mind. So, when the mother is always present with the food, the baby forms a link or a connection. Mother means food. Mother, always food is there. That is the association which forms in the baby. Baby already likes food, unconditioned stimulus to which it gives pleasure response. Now, mother is always there with food. So now the baby likes the mother also. As simple as that. So, baby becomes attached to the mother, meaning that attachment in learning theorists' opinion is nothing but associating the mother with the pleasure of getting food. That is all there is to attachment, according to them. Now, a little more terminology we have to understand, and this one is very helpful because, like I told you, in many behaviors, these principles are applied, so it will always help you. We saw that anything that is unlearned is an unconditioned stimulus. Same way, any response that is unlearned is an unconditioned response. Anything that is learned is said to be conditioned. The mother is a conditioned stimulus. When I say mother, assume caregiver. Caregiver is a conditioned stimulus because naturally the baby did not have a pleasure response to the mother. You must have noticed nowhere have they mentioned that naturally the baby feels pleasure towards mother. It is only after repeated experience of the mother giving food to the baby, of the mother feeding the baby with milk, that the baby comes to like the mother, or the baby comes to associate pleasure with the mother. So the mother is a learned stimulus. If by birth only the baby liked the mother without any experience of feeding, then she would have been an unconditioned stimulus. She is not. Experience of her feeding is required to be attached to her. Now the baby gives pleasurable response to the mother also after he gets that experience of being fed with the mother. So we'll call this conditioned response, learned response. The pleasure that goes towards the mother, it's not inborn, it comes after experience of the mother feeding the baby. So it's a conditioned learned response. But the pleasure which comes for the food, that comes naturally, that is not learned. So that is an unconditioned response. Here also the response is pleasure. Here also the response is pleasure. But what is the difference? Towards whom is the pleasure being given? If it's being given towards the unconditioned stimulus, then it is an unconditioned response. If it is being given to a conditioned stimulus, then it is a conditioned response. So, any response in classical conditioning, you have to see whom it is going towards. It is that type of response, either unconditioned or conditioned. And a little more terminology you can know, though it is not very important here, but it can help you otherwise. Initially, before there is experience of the mother feeding, she is said to be a neutral stimulus. When a baby is just born, does not have any experience with the mother right now, does not have any feeding experience, like think about right at the moment when the baby is born, the baby is indifferent towards the mother, according to learning theorists, because the baby has not yet been fed by the mother. So at that time, because the baby is indifferent, the mother is a neutral stimulus. Neutral meaning indifferent, does not make a difference to the baby. Only after being associated or paired with feeding does she start bringing about a pleasure response in the baby. Now let's come to operant conditioning. How does this bond remain maintained? Okay, we understand attachment as learning theorists define it. It comes by associating the mother with feeding. But then how does it continue? Why doesn't the attachment end? The answer to that is operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is learning by consequences. Just like whenever you see classical conditioning, you should think learning by association. Whenever you see operant conditioning, you should think learning by consequences. It's a very simple principle. Whichever behavior is rewarded will be repeated, and whichever behavior is punished will not be repeated. That is all you need to remember for the base of operant conditioning. It's as simple as that. Now let's see how it plays a role in attachment. Whenever a baby cries, it's hungry, so it's crying. The caregiver, the mother gives food. That is a very rewarding experience for the baby. And what did we see? What is rewarded is repeated. Baby cries multiple times. Every day the baby cries for food because every day it feels hungry. Every time the mother gives food to the baby, it is rewarding for the baby. Now, little more we need to understand what sort of a reward is this. Firstly, know that this terminology which we are seeing, reinforcement, it just means reward. In operant conditioning, they tell us there are two types of rewards: negative and positive. Positive is direct reward, very easy to understand. Negative is indirect reward, little more effort you have to put to understand. So, first, before we see it in context of attachment, let's take general example. Say, as a student, you're studying. Your teacher wants to encourage you to keep on studying every day. She wants you to keep on repeating this behavior. According to operant conditioning, what will she have to do? She will have to reward you. So she knows you like chocolate. So she gives you chocolate. She gives you something which you like. So every time you study, she gives you chocolate. This is positive reinforcement. When we give someone something they like or desire, it feels very nice to them, they feel rewarded, we call it positive reinforcement. Say your teacher feels it's not a good idea to give you a chocolate every day. She feels it's unhealthy, so she thinks of some other way to make you feel rewarded. She thinks, let me take away something from the student which they don't like, that will also be rewarding to them. Say you don't like to do chores. Any school chores are the extra curricular things they ask you to do, like they ask you to volunteer for cleaning after school hours, or to do some contribution towards the staff after school hours, like to help them with filing or with some printouts, making some arrangements. You don't like to do those chores for your school. So what your teacher says is, whenever I see you studying for that day, I will cancel your chores or your duties in school. You won't have to do your school duties whenever you study. You don't like to do your chores, you don't like to do your school duties, indirectly you feel rewarded. She's not giving you something you like, but she's taking away something that you don't like. So this is negative reinforcement, indirectly making you feel good. Now, having understood this, let's come back to attachment. And please keep one thing in mind: whether it is negative reinforcement or positive reinforcement, reward is always meant for repetition of behavior. Both types of reinforcement or both types of reward will make you repeat behavior. Do not confuse with punishment. We are not talking about punishment here at all. So, When the mother feeds the baby, what happens to the baby? Baby doesn't like to be hungry. It's a very uncomfortable sensation for the baby to be hungry. So hunger is equal to something the baby dislikes, doesn't like. That is taken away when the mother feeds. So now you can understand this is indirectly rewarding to the baby. The mother is not giving anything to the baby, but she's taking away something the baby doesn't like, hunger. So it's like negative reinforcement for the baby. This helps to maintain the attachment bond, which is first formed because of classical conditioning. Also, they say that caregiver by itself can also be positively reinforcing. Initially, they have given the idea of negative reinforcement. Later, some researchers have said just the presence of the caregiver makes the baby feel socially nourished, socially, someone is there, someone cares for them. That can feel very directly rewarding. Humans are social animals, so the presence and interaction with someone can feel like a direct positive reward. It feels pleasurable. Another idea which is given in operant conditioning and this whole topic of learning theory is drive reduction. So, first, let's understand what's a drive. A drive is a state of arousal in the body that you have to calm down or reduce to feel at ease. We all feel hunger from time to time. Our body has a need for food. To survive, we need to eat food, otherwise, we'll die. In the same way, we all feel thirst from time to time. Body has need for water. If we don't drink water, we will die. So we have needs like food and water, corresponding to which hunger and thirst drives arise. I need food, so my body creates a state of arousal or tension, which is called hunger. Till I eat something, till I satisfy it, I do not feel rewarded. Same way, I need water, so my body creates a state of arousal, thirst. Till I satisfy the thirst, I don't feel comforted. Like, think about the time you're very hungry or thirsty. Are you able to focus on anything? Are you able to do anything else? No. The body makes sure you're very aroused and tense till you satisfy that drive, that arousal, so that it can get its needs. Hunger is a primary drive for everybody, for all human beings. Primary drives are natural, which are needed for survival. Hunger and thirst are those drives. We will die if these drives don't arise. Think about if what if a person never feels hungry? What will happen to them? They won't eat only because they don't realize only when they need to eat. They'll die because food is not going to their body. So these are primary, very essential drives. When a caregiver gives food to the baby, like we were seeing in negative reinforcement, it reduces a drive, it reduces a state of tension. And that is why the baby forms attachment to the caregiver who is helping to reduce the drive. So, here they've just further explained what sort of negative reinforcement is maintaining the bond. One more term has been given to learning theory of attachment. It's called cupboard love theory. There's not too much detail in this. You just need to know that this term has been given and understand why it has been given. The mother in this theory is being treated like no more than a cupboard. Where do you keep your food? In some drawers, some shelves in your kitchen. So the mother is being treated just like that way. A shelf or a drawer which carries food. There's no other meaning. Like, you must be remembering Harlow's study we saw last time, which talks about contact comfort. This theory does not talk about any contact comfort, any touch, any sensation, like any need to feel good, skin to skin contact or comfort, nothing. What is the mother? Only the one who provides food, like a cupboard or a drawer that provides food. That's why this theory has been called cupboard love theory. Love meaning attachment. Finally, role of reinforcement, like we saw, just to make it very strong in us, what we have seen in that. When a baby cries, like when they're hungry, what they'll do, they will cry, they will seek proximity, they will want to come close to the caregiver. That time, all these behaviors of the baby are strengthened by rewards. Baby gets rewarded like we saw through feeding, the whole idea which we saw of reinforcement. So all these behaviors are being reinforced, so the baby keeps on repeating these behaviors. We saw whatever is rewarded will be repeated, so it keeps coming back to that idea. So you'll see babies repeatedly cry for mother's attention. They keep on calling out to her so that she comes close, like proximity seeking. So you can understand why these behaviors keep on recurring, and they strengthen the bond. Definitely these are those small behaviors by which the baby keeps on coming close to the mother, and attachment becomes further and further stronger. So you can understand why that is happening. That is happening because of reinforcement, repetition of behavior. So this whole idea what we saw right now is learning theory of attachment. You must discuss all the concepts. I put it in table format so that whenever it comes for AO1, especially say in an essay for 16 marks, you definitely discuss all the concepts mentioned on the left side. Now coming to the evaluation. First we have a strength of the theory. I have explained the layout in the last video. Again, I would like to remind you, if you need an orientation to how we are going about the points, do revisit the last video. There is research support for this theory. So always our first evaluation point is support from any research. So in the point, we follow the Peel format. The point you can make is that learning theory of attachment is supported by learning based explanations. Means there are many studies which have shown that learning based explanations are correct. We'll see one example of such a study. So to give evidence, we know we have to give a specific example that can come from Dollard and Miller's study. Last time I have told you that it's not important to remember the names of the researchers, which is true. Yeah, if you don't remember Dollard and Miller, it's okay. But I do feel you will find it easy to remember their names because they are very famous researchers. They have given the frustration aggression hypothesis in psychology for aggression, which is very famous. In case you're doing aggression, you'll definitely come across their name, or in general, you might have heard about them somewhere. They did a study, and in that, like every study, if you know research methods already, it's not about direct observation of samples. Some studies are just about counting through samples, general samples, how many times some behaviors are occurring. So just taking like a handful of baby mother pairs and finding out usually how much feeding takes place. They have estimated, you can see an approximate figure has been given in the first year of the baby, means from when the baby is absolutely newborn till the baby becomes 1 year old. Approximately there are 2000 instances of feeding, means a mother feeds the baby approximately, like on an average you can think 2000 times in a year. So this is their very general observation, but from this they come to a logical reasoning. If there is approximate of 2000 times of feeding, that means so many pairings, so many associations are taking place between the unconditioned stimulus, which is the food, and the conditioned stimulus, which is the mother. So the theory becomes very plausible because of this. Like what classical conditioning is saying about attachment, that because of repeated association of food and mother, this sort of bonding is taking place. It does become very likely because actually there is evidence that so much pairing or association of these two stimuli does happen in real life. It's not just a speculation, it's not just a lab phenomenon. This is actually what they have noted in everyday life. And going by that explanation further, not only classical conditioning, operant conditioning as well, these many times, like approximately 2000 times only in the first year itself, the baby's hunger, which is what the baby dislikes, is being taken away by the caregiver, the mother, which is very indirectly or negatively reinforcing to the baby. So that idea also seems very plausible, that negative reinforcement is occurring, so the baby is going on repeating the behavior, because very evidently the mother baby pairing is happening so many times hunger is being taken away, that it must feel rewarding to the baby every time. So this sort of research evidence has supported the learning theory of attachment. Okay, I'm sorry for the screen acting up like this. It's becoming a little distracting for me also. Okay, let's come to the next evaluation point. Moving beyond like research evidence that is supporting, there are other merits also to this theory. I told you learning theories cover many behaviors. So classical conditioning, operant conditioning, you will keep coming across in almost all chapters. You will realize that these are very scientific approaches, especially when you see behaviorism under approaches topic, it will be very clear, like directly it will be explained to you. Learning theories are based on objective, testable principles. Just now, what we saw, Dollard and Miller's research. Did you notice how they counted the behaviors? It might have irked also some of you that they are keeping track of this or they are counting, but literally they do these things. They count, they quantify things. Dollard and Miller are behavioral psychologists. So they have this habit of quantifying and measuring everything. They literally purposely come down to numbers of things because they feel numbers are very objective. They are unbiased. So they prefer doing these sort of quantitative researches where they are counting frequencies of things or they're giving scores for things, ranks for things, instead of going into like interviews, case studies, and qualitatively inwards exploring things. They always prefer this type of research. If you've done research methods already, you know quantitative data is unbiased because it has very direct interpretations. If 2000 times something is happening, there must be strong association between the stimuli which are occurring these 2000 times. It's not an opinion of the researcher, it's not speculation. They are actually seeing how many times these behaviors are happening. They are counting the facts or they are counting reality. And not only this, there are many researchers like this. When you see their terms also which they use, unconditioned stimulus, conditioned stimulus, response, reinforcement, rewarding, punishment, they really segregate one concept in the process. Like instead of just saying broadly that rewarding occurs or just saying broadly that the baby gets attached to the mother, they define, they put in measurable terms every part of the process. Like just now again, because this study is there in front of us, so I can refer to it again. 2000 times they are counting stimulus response pairings happening. Then, when they say reinforcement, they clarify, they operationalize what is the reinforcement, the food which is being given to the baby, what is being satisfied by that hunger. They don't keep anything vague, they don't keep anything ambiguous, they don't use abstract concepts, they use concepts which you can observe. Can you see a baby being fed? Yes. Can you see the mother's presence when the baby is being fed? Like, can you see the conditioned stimulus? Yes. So anyone can observe these things and record these things. These are testable, they are directly observable. What we say, they are empirical. Even if now it's not seeming very clear to you, it's okay, because ahead we'll see some theories like Bowlby's theory, where we will see concepts like deprivation, internal working model, which and monotropic relations, which are very hard to quantify in this way, very hard to directly observe or measure, unlike the concepts which we are seeing here, which are really narrowed down and connected to observable behaviors. So, this process which they have of using unbiased quantitative data and clearly operationalizing all variables, that makes their theory very scientific and measurable as compared to later explanations which we'll see are vague, like Bowlby's theory. And once we see that theory, you can draw direct comparisons also in evaluation. That's a very good idea. So, what is the benefit of all this? We get a valid, clear, structured explanation of attachment. Coming to weakness. One weakness we'll take this time, which we haven't seen last time, counter evidence or contradictory evidence. Just like we can give studies supporting a topic, and I have insisted that you take a study, take your first point as the study. You can always take studies that go against the topic as a weakness. So you can call it contradictory evidence. Contradictory evidence has been provided by Harlow, whose study we have already seen, so it's very easy to use it as counter evidence. I mentioned earlier also when I was discussing this learning theory, Harlow has shown something very different about attachment. The blanket mother, which was there in his study, The baby rhesus monkeys always prefer to go towards the blanket mother as against the feeding mother, the mesh wire mother. Means if you go to see in Harlow's study, he had directly pitted a feeding mother versus a blanket mother. I had told you that time also when we saw Harlow's study, keep in mind when we see learning theory, this point will come up again. And think of it as a competition between the surrogate mothers. Who won the competition? The blanket mother, not the feeding mother. And how do we know that? From the baby's preference. The rhesus monkey babies themselves, they preferred the blanket mother, not the feeding mother. So that only shows very directly that learning theory is not true. Of course, for a counterpoint, you can argue that was about monkeys. This is about humans. But more so, humans are much more sentient than monkeys, much more emotional than monkeys. So, if in monkeys only, which are less emotional, feeding is not as much important as a blanket or contact comfort is, how can it be in humans? Seems little difficult to accept that. So, attachment, that study, Halu study, has shown it's not only about feeding. Yes, the babies needed feeding for which they would extend towards the mesh wire mother and take feeding, but they were not attached to her in any way. We saw first opportunity they would get, they would go towards the cloth mother. You should write about things like these in your essay. Not only that, we saw when a predator was introduced by Halu and they needed protection, whom did they go towards? They went towards the cloth mother, not the feeding mother. So, in no way, neither for safety nor for contact, no way they wanted to be with the feeding mesh wire mother. We just go to show that in every way, contact comfort is important for attachment, something that is not considered in the learning theory at all. This just weakens learning theory. It's missing something very important in what attachment is. In fact, feeding does not seem to be important at all. So it's looking at something that is perhaps irrelevant to attachment. Also consider, we saw like learning theory is very objective. So why might they have not looked at comfort, touching, cloth comfort, contact comfort? Always, push your thinking as much as you can when it comes to critical thinking. It's very difficult to observe a feeling or an emotion like contact comfort. It's very easy to directly observe whether feeding is taking place or not. So, because behaviorists always want to be very scientific and objective, it fits with their idea to see something like feeding. They can directly observe it. But something like contact comfort, comfort is a state of being, it's not an outward behavior. It's very difficult for them to observe. So, they reject it. In the sense, they do not even consider it in their discussion. Once you come to approaches, you will be able to consider points like these even more. Finally, I had told you we must take a debate, an issue and debate. I've taken reductionism versus holism here. This is a very reductionist theory. Some idea we have got from Harlow's evaluation only. Contact comfort is being ignored. That makes it oversimplified or reductionist. Let's look at other aspects. So, definitely, we can introduce this issue by saying it's reductionist. For a discussed question, we must give issues and debates. Attachment, which is by definition an emotional bond between a caregiver and a baby. The emotion part has been removed from it and it has been reduced, or it has been oversimplified to nothing but feeding behavior. Like we saw cupboard love. Mother is reduced to nothing more but a feeding cupboard. And baby is reduced to nothing more but seeking feeding or seeking like satisfaction of hunger, as if the baby also wants nothing more. So, too much reductionism. There are innate behaviors in babies. They seek comfort and emotional warmth directly from their parents, which we will see ahead in Bowlby's theory. There is a mention of social releases, special bonding with the mother, separation anxiety, getting upset, getting emotionally charged when the mother is not there. Those emotions, that anxiety which the baby is born with, that desire to feel safe in the presence of the mother, these mental emotional processes have no room at all in the learning theory. There's no mention of them. There are cognitive processes also. No doubt a very small baby might not have much mental capacity to think about like which caregiver they prefer or why they want to be close to a caregiver. But when it comes to little older children also, after all, attachment is going to continue for many years. It's not just about newborn babies. So little older babies or little older children also, they do think about whom they like to be with, whom they feel happy with, whom they like to connect with, whom they want to share their ideas, like say with their mother. So cognitive processes also play a role. Can this feeding attachment, even if we assume lasts in the like for plays a very important role in beginning in the newborn stage, can it play a role forever throughout an attachment bond like for entire childhood? Just consider that. So definitely reductionism becomes a problem. It's unrealistic. We cannot say in real life attachment is only on the basis of feeding. But as a counter, like I've told you, definitely introduce a counterpoint somewhere. The good thing about reductionism is we are always able to establish a cause effect. This becomes very difficult in theories like that of Bowlby, which we will see ahead. Here we can clearly manipulate things like feeding. In humans, it can be unethical, like to deliberately deprive someone of feeding, but we can take a group of animals close to what Harlow did, let half of them be fed by their actual mother, and just deprive the others of feeding. I know it's unethical, but to some extent, this can be done with animals. With humans, it's absolutely unethical. And then just we will just see towards whom the baby is bonding, the feeding one or the like who is having a bonding with the mother, who keeps on crying for the attention of the mother, who keeps on calling out for the mother. Is it the one who's being fed by the mother, or is it the one who's not being fed by the mother? So these type of simple experiments can be conducted. In fact, even Harlow did it, though we saw the learning theory lost in that one. But still, it can be done. Similar things, if they could do it with monkeys, it can be done with animals. Experimentation is possible, meaning cause effect relations can be established. Just assume such an experiment is conducted. We take a group of animals, feed them, and we find those who are being fed. They are the ones who are forming bonding. Those who are not being fed are not bonding, not calling out for the attention of their mother. We will be able to say the feeding is the cause for the bonding, because otherwise it should have been in the other group also. This is how experiments work. So reductionism enables us to do experiments, establish cause effect between what we are looking for. That is a very big strength of taking this approach. That's why today also learning theories are so popular. We see them all over the place because of the scientific nature which they have. So ultimately what we can say, this theory looks at reductionism, holism. It gives an example of the reductionist side. Some other theories we'll see which are more holistic. So this represents a reductionist approach which has its own strengths, merits. Yes, you can look at it from nature nurture point of view also. This is strictly on the side of nurture. It does not account for nature at all. Like we saw throughout, no innate mechanisms are considered. Those are considered again in Bowlby's theory. So from that perspective also it's reductionist because it supports only nurture. So that is it for this lesson, learning theory of attachment. Next time we will look at Bowlby's monotropic theory of attachment. Till then, keep revising this lesson and the previous one. I will see you very soon. Goodbye.